Vinod Kumar Shukla, who passed away today at age 89, was an exceptionally gifted poet and writer of lucid quietude. The winner of the Gnanpith Award, India's highest literary honor, Shukla was also someone who thought visually first and then in poetry and prose. In a 2000 interview with Pustak Varta, he had said, and I quote him now, "I don't think in language. Ideas come to me visually. I think visually," unquote. It is not surprising then that oftentimes his poetry is like an abstract painting. Abstraction is part of his technique in writing. I chanced upon Shukla's poetry sometime in 2013. The way I first approach any piece of writing is from the standpoint of whether it is readable. Substance is important, of course, but substance is like a destination, and writing is like the path that leads to it. If the path is uneven, strewn with poorly constructed phrases and sentences, one tends to veer away from the substance. A very cursory look at Shukla's works, as available on the internet, tells me that he was someone who had particularly distilled creative expression. He was also someone who was very visual. In a remarkable show of democratic generosity in contrast to literary exclusivism and conceit of many other great writers, Shukla once said, and I quote him, "Everybody should write at least one book. There is no person in all life about whom something cannot be written. Everyone can write about themselves and others," unquote. As a poet, Shukla assumes a certain degree of intelligence among his readers, even as he keeps his writing deftly light in terms of its lexical weight. Take, for instance, his celebrated 2002 poem, "Hatasha se ek vyakti baith gaya tha," or a man had sat down in desperation, from the collection Atrikt Nahi, or nothing, surplus. हताशा से एक व्यक्ति बैठ गया था। व्यक्ति को मैं नहीं जानता था, हताशा को जानता था। इसलिए मैं उस व्यक्ति के पास गया, मैंने हाथ बढ़ाया, मेरा हाथ पकड़कर वह खड़ा हुआ। मुझे वह नहीं जानता था, मेरे हाथ बढ़ाने को जानता था। हम दोनों साथ चले, दोनों एक दूसरे को नहीं जानते थे, साथ चलने को जानते थे. Making a point about knowing what desperation is, even while not knowing the person who is experiencing it, and extending a hand is not just profoundly poetic, but also deeply empathetic. This short poem's concluding line saying that the two did not have to know each other as long as they knew walking together in many ways represent the quintessence of Shukla's oeuvre. It was clearly not Shukla's style to write ostentatiously. If anything, he seemed to share his poetry and prose both of verbal grandiosity. He was a minimalist. However, the substance of what he wrote is anything but minimalist. In terms of his poetry's recitational or popular appeal, it may be called demanding. It can even be called an acquired taste, but then life is an acquired taste. Once it is acquired, it endures and even reveals more than originally thought by the reader. Let me conclude by quoting the opening lines of a poem titled "आँख बंद कर लेने से." आँख बंद कर लेने से अंधे की दृष्टि नहीं पाई जा सकती, जिसके टटोलने की दूरी पर है संपूर्ण, जैसे दृष्टि की दूरी पर. Here is to Vinod Kumar Shukla.